Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Wake Up with the Consciousness Cafe. My name is Lisa Ferraro, and Consciousness Cafe is brought to you by SoulCall Ministries. You can find out more about us at soulcallministries.org. This morning, it is my great pleasure to welcome one of the wisest, funniest, most down-to-earth, sage-like people I know. I've had the great pleasure of working with and just hanging out with. Welcome, Reverend Dr. Jim Lockard. Good morning from Lyon, France. Good morning, Jim.
Yes. Good afternoon from Lyon. Yeah. Bonsoir, we would say.
And we were just talking offline for a minute, and you were just expressing the things you're seeing as people are kind of acting out on social media or experiencing pain. So we were going to talk a little bit about spiritual growth through this global pandemic, and I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, I was actually in law enforcement for 25 years, and I was in training, in the training unit for a big part of that. And in training for the kinds of what we call high stress, life and death kinds of things, what we came to realize is that you can't get creative in a crisis. That when something is upon you and it puts enough pressure on you to really stress your system, you only can go with what you already know. So we would really emphasize the kinds of techniques that police officers needed to use to be successful if they were physically attacked or something like that. And at the same time, try to instill in them a balance of emotional intelligence so that they didn't overreact just from being, say, yelled at or called names or something like that. But what we did know was they had to have that within them and have developed it before they encountered a situation where they would not be able to produce it.
Right.
So I think this current situation with the pandemic, with there's all kinds of stuff going on, climate change, and in the U.S. it's an election year and all the political stuff going on. It's kind of a slow-moving crisis, and there's advantages and disadvantages to that. One of the disadvantages is it takes a long time to go through it. So we tend to have, we might have done okay for a week or two, but now we're into months and it becomes more difficult. Some people are in very difficult domestic situations where there might be abuse or issues. Some people are financially really stressed at this time.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's kind of slow moving, the advantage is you can actually do some developmental work that will have an impact on how you move through the rest of it.
Right.
And that kind of developmental work is, something I normally refer to as daily practices, daily spiritual practices, meditation, prayer, affirmation, visualization, of kind of trying to create that belief system or consciousness that says, I'm up to this, I'm a match for this, I'm actually going to come out of this better than I went in.
Right. You raise a really interesting point, and one that not many people are making is I'm up for this, I'm here at this time. Like there's this idea, why is this happening now? Well, if we can reframe it, which is not always easy to do, as you pointed out, some people are living in domestic situations that are not favorable for this kind of introspection. It's fight or flight all day long. But there's that idea that if you have the opportunity to introspect a little bit and pull forth from, I'm on the planet at this time, therefore there's something in this for me, and I'm in alignment with what is happening. What is it? What's for me in this situation? That's a big one.
Yeah, and I think what you say, if it's in my life, it's mine. That's one of the tenets that I believe in. That if it's in my life, it's mine to deal with. Joseph Campbell talks about the spiritual warrior who says yes to it all, which means that whatever shows up at your doorstep each day is yours, and you accept it as that. We often spend a lot of time trying to avoid the negative stuff that shows up, or trying to not deal with it, and so forth, and that really never works in the long term.
Yeah.
So seeing myself as a match for whatever is there is an important first step, because that's building a healthy self-concept. And our healthy self-concept, or self-acceptance, or self-love, however you frame it, is the key to how we engage with everything in our life, whether it's something that's unknown that's shown up, or whether it's dealing with an old problem that we just haven't dealt with for a long time.
Yeah.
So that spiritual, seeing myself as a spiritual warrior, I think is important. Not to be violent, but to be ferocious in approaching that which is threatening.
Yeah. Feels like what you're highlighting here too is, because it's a slow moving thing. On the outside, it's a slow moving thing. On the inside, it could speed up our spiritual progress because we are faced with the thing 24/7 sometimes. Like, it's not like I have to deal with this, or like, I don't know, dealing with a group of people for an hour or 2 hours, then I can leave and go do something else. Kind of like we're in it. As Rumi liked to say, we're chickpeas cooking in that pot until we're done. Sometimes it feels like that big pot of chickpeas, we're all kind of in it. I know in the United States, we were talking about this too. I'm not sure what it's like in France with regard to wearing masks, but here it's become, if some people are upset if you're wearing a mask, other people are upset if you're not. And it seems to be riding along mostly party lines more than anything in terms of politics. How can we, yeah, you had a good insight about that without calling something right or wrong. It's just an interesting relationship.
Yeah, there's been a buildup of the consciousness of separation and conflict in the U.S. for several decades. I mean, it's not new. And how can you expect something like that not to be amplified when you have a situation where there's a lot of pressure? People are kind of conditioned, many people are kind of conditioned to see things through that lens of, how does this fit in with my political ideology? And then when they go to their siloed media sources, which are different, right? They get told what it means and how to behave, and they often adhere to that. So, it's like, I know a number of people on both sides of the spectrum, and they tend to fall into line pretty quickly with what I would call the talking points of the moment, which is sort of sad. It shows that there's not a lot of thinking for ourselves. There's not a lot of saying, is this really wise? Is this really considerate? Is there any compassion here? Am I being loving, or am I just, kind of looking for the next target of my anger? I've dealt with it on my own level by saying, I'm not accountable for how other people think and believe. And it doesn't matter, because I don't know anybody that's making decisions that are affecting the whole world. Most of the people I know are like me. If I get upset or not upset, the world doesn't change much. So why should I worry about somebody else at that level? On the other hand, I care about them. So if there's a disagreement, I try to speak to it, but you can't always. It's just, there's not a receptivity. And even some of the people I agree with, I disagree with on some things.
Right.
So I'm fortunate. I'm living in Europe, where there's a little more sanity at the moment. It's not that it couldn't become the way it is in the US, but it hasn't yet. And there's just a different, you see more cooperation. There's people wearing masks and people not wearing masks, but it has nothing to do with political affiliation. Right. I'd say it has to do with social awareness or a social conscience or something like that. So it's different. And I think we have to allow that there's going to be people struggling. There's going to be people that are going to be buying into things like false ideas, like conspiracy theories, because they're so afraid. They're looking for something to cling to that can make them feel stable, even if that is in instability, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Yeah. There's this way of trying to find something. We're talking about, it's just so ambiguous, amorphous right now. There's not one thing that has landed where you could solidly start to build upon it. Something that looks like a semblance of order in it. It seems to has calmed down a little bit, but not completely. And I think here we're just starting to be able to go out. I think they just opened restaurants I'm in Columbus, Ohio, Thursday. Not quite sure how that's going, but it's been a curious thing. On the other side of that, you live in one of the most amazing regions for wine So we have spirits and spirits. I know you do. We're looking forward to co-creating a retreat in Switzerland in October.
Yes.
So if you're at the very beginning, looking for something, and I know this is a generalized question, but is there one place most of us can start that is sort of an easy entree into creating the inner consciousness, the scaffolding, if you will, to just construct a simple spiritual practice that could bring you back to the center of the soul? Easy, easy.
Well, I think probably, what I like to call dynamic meditation, which is simply meditation with no intention, where you just try to sit quietly and notice the thoughts. Don't try to stop the thoughts. You're not going to anyway. Just notice the thoughts and just try to distance yourself a little bit from them. It's like, okay, I'm thinking that, I'm feeling that. I just let it kind of drift away and see what comes up next. And it's hard to do initially because we've trained our minds to be active, like monkey mind kind of thing, which is sort of a defense mechanism, I think.
Yeah.
But the simplest thing you do is just allow yourself to sit for, say, 10 minutes in the morning or 10 minutes in the evening, and then gradually expand that outward if it feels comfortable. If you find after a few weeks of really giving it that energy, it doesn't work for you, then maybe a walking meditation where you're out in a space that's relatively quiet and you can just walk and not be noticing what people are doing, but, oh, there's a tree. Let me really examine that tree. As I'm walking along, what's in the pathway in front of me? Mm-hmm. Just to sort of detach from the doingness, the busyness for a period of time. And we know there's physiological benefits to that. It can actually lower your cholesterol if you're a meditator. Oh. In addition to the psychological benefit of over time, you begin to get more dominion over your thought process. Mm-hmm. You become a little calmer. Mm-hmm. And again, everybody doesn't have the same experience, but what we do know with the research is it takes a dedicated effort of, several months to really begin to see the difference. If you miss a day, big deal. But it's sort of like going to the gym. Do your best, but keep the intention of trying to make it to. At some point, it'll become a habit. You will feel really agonized if you don't do your sit down for that period of time. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the simplest. Because you're really doing nothing.
Right. I could do nothing for a long time sometimes. It's great. I think that's going to be the number one. It's very simple. Do nothing.
Do nothing.
I like it. Since you can't do anything anyway, learning how to do nothing effectively is probably a good thing.
Yeah. Maybe pay attention to your breathing or something just so you're not scattered. But mm-hmm. Other than that, you're not really trying to do anything. You're not, I think there's a confusion between meditation and contemplation. Both are important, I think. But contemplation is where you sit down to contemplate something. Right. How is my marriage going? What do I want to do in 5 years? Or what's bothering me about this particular situation? Mm-hmm. Or contemplating something I just read. But meditation, you're not doing any of that. You're simply sitting and being, and thoughts will arise because that's what happens. But you just notice them. You don't go with them. You just notice them. And if you notice you've gone off here, you just gently bring yourself back and focus on your breathing again.
So I'm getting this image of lying in the grass, looking up at the clouds, just watching them float by.
Oh my God, I did that as a kid all the time, and it was so, I didn't know I was doing something really beneficial.
Yeah. So allowing your thoughts to float by without attaching, because there comes a point where you can't see it anymore, and they just follow what comes into your line of sight, like in your inner vision, right? Really valuable.
We need to spend that time for ourselves. It's sort of a gift to yourself.
Yeah.
Because if we don't do that, we get sucked into the morning activity of maybe getting online right away or watching the morning news or something like that, and then the brain just takes off.
Yeah.
And,
so it's kind of,
don't get the benefit.
Yeah, you're giving yourself the opportunity to participate with yourself first before the rest of the world suggests what you might want to participate with.
Yeah, and maybe again right before bed.
Yeah.
So that you can sleep better.
If we were starting to, I know you are, and we'll talk about this another time too, Joseph Campbell and the Hero's Journey, as we were saying, what would be one of the best, if there's so many great works, a great introduction to Joseph Campbell and the Hero's Journey, the spiritual warrior? What might you?
Well, probably the book that would be the essential book would be The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. It's a classic. And it looks at the hero's journey motif throughout the world in various cultures as a myth. And a myth is something, in this context, is something that we use as human beings to help us connect with our deeper appetites and our deeper experiences.
Jim, I want to
Yeah.
thank
Go
you
ahead.
for joining us this morning. Our time is,
Pleasure.
this is a short one, but we're going to have you join us for a SoulCall Sunday. You'll get a longer, more of an opportunity to share your wisdom. It's
I look forward to it.
To see you and laugh with you, and love to Dorianne. And
Yes.
Until next time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Love you.
All
Thank
right.
you. All right.
Namaste.